I'm Eric Barnes of the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today we're talking about two folks from the Brooks Museum about a new exhibit coming up dedicated to the Memphis College of Art. So stay with us for a conversation about the new exhibit. So I've got Marina Pacini, whose name I cannot pronounce. I don't know why, even though it's written on front of me, and I apologize just profusely, who will be guest curator on this new exhibit coming up. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Also
got Patricia Daigle is back. She is curator of modern and contemporary art at the Brooks Museum. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's right.
Amazing. Okay, I'm off. I'm really rolling now. But really, I'm really glad you guys are here. I'm glad about this exhibit. Zoe Carr was on the show. The head of the Brooks was on the show in the last few months, and she kind of mentioned this real briefly, that there's talk of doing something on Memphis College of Art. And for those who maybe don't know, which would be terrible, but it's possible, Memphis College of Art was here, and we can talk more. You guys have more details probably than I do, but was here for decades, had this amazing history in Memphis, and closed, just after years of kind of struggling financially, closed. Not only was it sad that it closed, it was really sad that it closed. That last graduating class was during COVID. It was sort of just by necessity, this incredibly unceremonial end to this really great institution. And we, the Metal Museum is going into the old facility, which is fantastic. But we've had a number of people on the show from who were graduates of MCA. And I think all of them have a sense of this sort of wanting, like, how do we mark this history? It's one thing that the economics didn't work. Okay. But there's all this incredible history with it, and this legacy of these artists and so on. And so this is in part what you're working on, Marina, is a project that would show at the Brooks that would do what?
It's to celebrate the amazing history of this incredible school. Officially, they state that they were open from 36 to 2020, but there's a really interesting earlier history. We can get into that in a few minutes. But it made an amazing contribution to this community, but it also had an impact nationally. And that was part of my charge from Zoe, is to really dig deep into it and to focus on the fact that it has had this big impact, again, sure, in the city, but that it really also has had a national, actually international impact as well.
Yeah. And so you're looking, this show will be in what, 25?
Spring of 25. It'll be the last exhibition in the building before the museum moves downtown.
Okay. And so right now, in part, you're putting a kind of a call out, right?
Exactly. So the school closed in 2020, and how am I supposed to find all of these wonderful former faculty, administrators, and students? And, having lived in Memphis since 91, I know a bunch of these people, but there's many, many of them that I don't know how to find. So the first thing that we did was developed a questionnaire, and a link to it was posted on the Arts Memphis newsletter. And we've had a really terrific response, but it's still a drop in the bucket in terms of the number of former faculty, administrators, and students. And so we're also hoping that, a lot of these individuals sold artwork in this town. Mm-hmm. So there are probably works by many of the faculty, administrators, and students in this community. And I'm also trying to find them, because we're going to have the artwork to hang on the walls for the exhibition or put on pedestals.
Yeah. And let's get Patricia in on this.
Sure.
I'm sure you're excited about this as well.
Yes.
I mean, just given all this kind of crossover,
Sure.
history.
It just seems like wonderful timing also to bring back Marina as guest curator. It seems like a wonderful way to close out our time in our 1916 building in Overton Park, and just celebrating, the history of these two really major arts institutions in Overton Park, and really to celebrate our departure for downtown, but also celebrate, the building that we're in now, and celebrate the college too.
And you were chief curator.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
You were at the Brooks for what, 18, 19 years?
Kaywin Feldman hired me in 2001. Yeah. I was promoted to chief curator in 2002, and then I retired on November 1st, 2019.
Right before COVID. Good timing.
Exactly.
Maybe,
I
or maybe
would
really
like to
bad
tell
timing.
you I was prescient, but it had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. In terms of that history, I mean, the College of Art turned out some amazing artists, visual artists. It also turned out people who, and I don't want to like rank these, but it turned out people who went into graphic design, people who became animators, people who worked at ad agencies or work at ad agencies. Will you try to embrace some of that too? The whole sort of legacy of not everyone goes to be a painter in the Louvre, right?
Well,
I mean, and that's fine.
And some of the students didn't end up doing anything.
Yeah.
For example, the beloved John Hart was a MCA graduate. He's now a preparator at the museum. Allison Smith is a major player at the Gagosian Gallery in New York City. So not everybody, although Allison continues to make art, I don't want to suggest that she's quit making art. But no, you're absolutely right. Their graduates went off into lots of different directions. And it is my hope to try to get as wide a range of the work. I mean, I'm also hoping to go back historically. One of the things I'm hoping is that a painting by George Obertufer will turn up. He was the artist who was part of the previous incarnation of the school that left and is the reason that MCA, well, at that point, the Memphis Academy of Art started. It would be great to have one of his paintings so that we really and truly can cover the history of the institution. And I very much want to include industrial design was something that was being taught there from the very beginning. So yes, looking for everything.
Yeah. And how will so there'll be an exhibit of some number of months, I assume. I don't know if all that's set yet, but I mean, then will there be a book sometimes that come out of these things of some sort of, I mean, how do you keep this thing alive beyond, or the record alive beyond the term of the exhibit?
There is a catalog associated with it.
Catalog, thank you.
Yeah, no, Zoe was insistent that it be accompanied by a catalog. And part of my charge is I'm writing a history of the college. And I've been laughing about the fact that I have a tendency to always go too deep into things, which means I'm going to have to spend an awful lot of time editing. I think I'm supposed to write something like about 4,000 or 5,000 words. I've got 7,000 words written, and I'm only at 1949. So I've got a lot of work cut out to cut a lot of this back out again.
5,000 words for the history of that is not a lot. I would lobby for some, I don't know, some more pages.
Well, there's other authors that are going to be contributing as well.
Yeah.
I'm not the only voice. And in fact, I mean, as long as we're on this, I've got Adam Hawk, for example, who was a student, an alum, and then ended up teaching, went to Horn Island for 20 years. And so he's writing a piece about what it was like to go to Horn Island and how transformative that experience was. And, he's standing in for many, many, many people who talked about the fact that they went there and it changed the way that they saw the world, how they made their art, long after the event was over. I want to find the right person to write about the Saturday school. That was another really important thing where a lot of kids in this town went there and then ended up deciding to become artists in, whichever field they ended up moving into as a result of the classes that they took there. Mary Sims didn't graduate from the college, but she's just one example of somebody for whom those classes were, the gateway to becoming a professional artist.
Yeah. The other things with the Brooks, if at all, I mean, there's a certain amount of MCA alum art that's in the Brooks collection, right?
Yes. So our hope is to also include a lot of those works in our permanent collection that we've already collected, and maybe use this opportunity also to acquire a few new works as well. We're really hoping on relying on our own collection, but then part of why we're here today is to really seek out those works that are in collections, private collections in Memphis or the region that we may not know about.
And for those works that are in private collections, you're not necessarily looking, you're not asking people to donate them.
Right. No, not necessarily.
I know you're all really close to this, but I mean, to be the average person listening, kind of like, well, what are they going to do with those?
No,
maybe I need to hide it because they're going to come find it or something.
No, at this point, if people are wanting to loan their works and lend their works to us for the exhibition, that's kind of where we're starting right now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Where will it be this will be in the existing building?
So it'll be in the existing building. And what's exciting about this, I think, for us is usually our temporary exhibitions are in our lower level. And so we will actually have another temporary exhibition, a contemporary photo exhibition on view at that time as well. But we will actually use our permanent collection galleries on the main level for this. So when you walk in, our sort of American and modern and contemporary galleries that are sort of straight back and diagonal if you walk in off the rotunda. So it will be kind of front and center.
Okay. I'm going to do a little housekeeping. We'll talk more about the MCA exhibit. We'll talk about other exhibits that are going on, other things about the both of you. But let me do some housekeeping and remind everyone, this is The Sidebar. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. The Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30, talking about community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's also a podcast, one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Behind the Headlines podcast, Bill Drees and Sam Hardiman's Politics podcast, On the Record, the Memphis Grizzlies podcast with Chris Harrington and Drew Hill, and Jennifer Biggs and Chris Harrington's food podcast, Soundbites, which also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before The Sidebar. All of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Not Stitcher, though. We talked about that with Holly Whitfield last week. No Stitcher. Stitcher's going out of business. It's being absorbed by Pandora. So our many millions of Stitcher listeners need to update their clients. Also for the Sidebar and for the food show, Soundbites, you can get those on WYXR.org or download the WYXR app. That includes all of the WYXR shows, the talk shows, and archives of the music shows. I should also note that WYXR is nonprofit, listener-supported radio. So if you can become a member, you can go to the YXR website, learn more about all the benefits of becoming a member or just of donating at any level. That is very much what keeps the WYXR on the air and going. Recently, we had 2 shows with Daily Memphian related folks. Jeff Calkins came on talking about his shift away from quite so much sports to more kind of broader writing for us, as well as Otis Sanford was on, columnist for the Daily Memphian. We also talked a bit about the 5-year anniversary of the Daily Memphian, which is coming up. And over the course of the summer into the fall, leading up to September 18th, when it is our 5-year launch anniversary, we'll have other folks from Daily Memphian on to talk about the strange and interesting 5-year history of this place. We've got other shows coming up on Sidebar. It's the 25th anniversary for Tsunami, the restaurant in Cooper Young. So Ben Smith is coming on for that next week, and other things that are in the works that will be coming up over the course of the summer and fall. I mentioned Behind the Headlines, which we do with the good folks over at WKNO every Friday night at 7, but also as a podcast or available online. We recently had Frank Colvett, city councilman and candidate for mayor. We're going to try to have all the main candidates for mayor on for full-blown profiles, interviews over the course of the summer. Some other are lined up. I will not try to, out of my memory, list those that are lined up, but be watching if you're following the mayoral race, and you should be watching for those profiles as they come out. We also have some non-mayor shows coming up. Mayor Palazzolo from Germantown is coming on, I think this week. Brent Taylor, the state senator, is coming on. And we have Zoe Carr, who the 2 folks here in the studio are very familiar with. She is the head of the Brook. She's coming up on Behind the Headlines in August. Last bit of housekeeping is our small business seminar is coming up August 24th. We'll have 3 different business owners. That'll be at the Botanic Garden, right? I'm looking over at Natalie Van Gundy, producer of all of these great things. That is probably 3 or 3:30. Go to Eventbrite, search for Daily Memphian. 3:30. I'm getting the hand signals, a little American sign language going on over here. Just go to Eventbrite, search for Daily Memphian. You'll be able to sign up for, I think, any of our business seminars that are coming up in the fall. But we are here with Marina Pacini, who is the guest curator on this exhibit, honoring sounds kind of formal. I don't know, but celebrating. I'll put it that way. How's that? Memphis College of Art, as well as Patricia Daigle, who's curator of modern and contemporary art. You want to talk? I had Zoe on Sidebar a couple months ago.
Sure.
And one thing we talked about was this, it's been a concern since the museum announced it was moving downtown, is that people would sort of think, oh, I guess the other one's closed. Or, we write about it, Daily Memphian, other people write about or cover, the construction and the groundbreaking and the fundraising. And that maybe inadvertently takes the spotlight off the existing museum, which is doing all kinds of things. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on there right now?
Yeah, so we are most definitely open and probably more active than ever, it feels. So we are opening our a traveling exhibition called Black American Portraits, which is organized by the LA County Museum of Art. And that is going to open on August 17th. So
is that where Zoe was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, why do I know that?
Yes.
And why of all places would I know that name? Okay.
Yeah. So that's coming here. It features over 130 works by both historical and contemporary Black artists who focus on portraiture. And that's fairly loosely defined. So you'll see more conventional portraits, but other sort of figurative works as well. And so it's really looking at the genre of portraiture as sort of a site for, forming identity, racial identity, and a site for, political expression and things of that nature. So,
yeah. And that's coming up, say again?
August 17th, and that runs through January 7th. So that's our next big show that's coming up, which we're excited about. Yeah.
And we talked about, you were at the museum, Marina, for 19 years, give or take. How did you get into this? Let's go back in time. Why art for you?
Oh boy, that's a big one. I will promise to make, it's going to sound like this is going to go way, way crazy, but it's not. My grandmother actually went to Pratt and got a degree in art. And so I grew up with a grandmother who was always pulling out art books, looking at illustration, making things. And then we just ended up going to museums, even as kids. And then art history just, got bitten by it. I had a series of wacky things happen. I got my master's degree at the University of Delaware and interned at the Philadelphia Museum of Art in the American Art Department. And while I was there, was sharing a desk with a person who was working on a project for the Archives of American Art. So I ended up taking that job and spent 7 years working on a Philadelphia project for the Archives of American Art. Came to Memphis with my husband, who is the chair of the art department at Rhodes, taught at University of Memphis, worked over at Rhodes at the Clough Hansen Gallery, and then Kaywin saw my shows and hired me over at the museum.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, the books of art, because I have this, I think I talked to Patricia about it. I've talked about it anytime we've had, usually when we've had museum people on, that I do, not in any particularly learned or sophisticated way. I love museums. I love to wander through art museums. I sort of have my way of doing it. I've mentioned to maybe you, Patricia, that my friend Randy Suffolk is the head of the High Museum in Atlanta, and he's been at the Tulsa Museum and one in upstate New York, and another in Philly was where his first job was. But I've gotten to walk through all the museums he's been part of, and I've been able to go through like the Guggenheim in New York and part of the modern various museums around the country with Randy, which is so much fun and so interesting. And Randy, y'all may know him, I don't know, but he is very down to earth person. Like, he did the tour of the High Museum. He looked ridiculous. He was wearing like khaki shorts and like ankle high white socks and running shoes. And I'm like, Randy, but he's just has this amazing way of talking about art. And I think that's one of the cool things. And the art books reminds me that my mother always had these art books around. I don't know that I was much, much older. I was in my 20s, I think, before I really went into an art museum. But I always loved looking through those books, just to be around it. So interesting. How did you, and I know we talked about when you were on, but for those who didn't hear that interview, why art for you? Why this life?
Sort of similar story. My mom, for reasons unknown, has sort of an artistic bone in her body. She's a scientist, but she always kind of drew with me on the side and kind of got me into art. And so as a kid, I kind of, did that kind of activity with her. And then it really wasn't until high school, and it really was a teacher in a public school. It was an AP art history class. Mr. Tom Williams really was that first to really inspire me. And it was the first time that, studying didn't feel like work, and it felt like something that I really enjoyed doing. And that's when I kind of knew that this is something more than just,
Yeah.
another subject. And so that's really how I got into it. But I didn't really work in museums until I was in graduate school. So I would think I was about 25 or so when I had my first museum job, which is something I tell our interns every day. Like, you guys are a lot
Hang in
younger
there.
than I was when I first started out. But so that's kind of how I got into museum work. So.
I completely left out an amazing story. So I got my undergraduate degree in Madison, University of Wisconsin, and moved to St. Paul. It never occurred to me that with an art history degree, you might get a job at a museum. So I'm wandering around trying to find a job, and this was 1979. The economy was in the toilet, and Jimmy Carter instituted the CETA program, which was specifically designed to give nonprofits like 50% of a salary so that they would go and hire all of these people who were unemployed. So I ended up getting a job at the Minnesota Museum of Art, where I worked with the registrar's office and with the curators. And it was just like, wow, you can work in a museum. What a great place to be, which is why I ended up going to graduate school so that I could then actually become a museum curator. So weird stuff happens.
Just both mentioned college and all that. MCA going under, which we can talk through all kinds of things about that, but we don't have to. But it's not alone in this, right? I mean, colleges, especially small colleges, are under tremendous pressure. They're incredibly expensive, and it's just getting unaffordable. College just generally is getting unaffordable. So if they're a smaller college and don't have a huge endowment to kind of support things, it can become a downward spiral. And then the art colleges too, I think, have been taking some real hits around the country.
But it's also, you've got the demographics, the number of kids is dropping. So the number there, what was it? I just heard an amazing statistic about how many fewer students are applying to schools. And so
of any type of college. Yeah.
So everybody is competing more for fewer students. So there's all sorts of stresses and strains. And no, the college is not the only place that's gone out of business. The Atlanta College of Art, I believe, was bought out by the Savannah College of Art. It has, sort of like an octopus taken over a bunch of other independent schools.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because it's got to get bigger. Partly, one, it's opportunity, but two, it's got to be bigger to just sort of support the endeavor, I assume. Yeah, yeah. Do you think you'll cover some of that history? I mean, it's sad, will that be part of the book, part of the catalog?
I mean, it has to be mentioned, but I mean, I'm not an economist.
Yeah, sure. Right. No,
and
shouldn't have to be. Right.
there were lots of different pressures on the school. And, it depends on who you talk to. Yeah. You know what it's like in this town. You've got lots of different opinions as to what caused the school to close.
I've heard many versions and many fingers pointed. And I'm just like, la, la, la. Because you just don't know. I mean, you don't know.
And not only that, but I mean, this is not supposed to be, I don't want to send people out with brickbats against anybody. This is supposed to be a celebration. So
right.
The focus is going to really be on the really good parts, of which there are so very many.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you are looking at other art colleges across the country kind of at the same time and seeing where MCA fits into that kind of narrative too.
Yeah.
We have probably 5 minutes left. Did I say this part out loud? I think, isn't the Metal Museum going to have a section of its new place in the new building dedicated to MCA? I know they've talked about it.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, not a big thing, but I think Carissa was on, the head of the Metal Museum. I think what I remember her saying was like, we know we want to honor that legacy. We're not exactly sure how yet, but we will. Because as sad as it is that College of Art went under, if that building had remained dark or had been put to some kind of of all the uses it could be put to, it's about as good as it could get, right? A really cool local institution. There were metalworking artists who came out of MCA. Yeah. So there's some legacy there that's pretty nice.
Well, and she's doing justice to the building. I mean, it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be such a gift to the city, what she's doing over there. It's amazing.
Right. Patricia, you wanted to articulate what's going to happen next to the Brooks building in the park. I'm laughing. I'm joking. You're looking at me like, oh my God, don't do this. So it is the question everyone wants to know, sort of, not everyone, but people who care about these things want to know what's going to happen next with the Brooks building in the park. And you don't know. I mean, you don't really
we don't know, and
on.
we don't have control over
Yeah,
it. So it's
right.
a city-owned building. I wish I knew more because I do get that question a lot. But,
Yeah. We'll be reporting more on that. I mean, I know there's lots of things. There's been a few studies of possible uses. There've been a few round of proposals. I mean, as you of all people, both of you know, it is funny. Some of the proposals that come forward, which are wonderful ideas, fantastic, great, awesome. You don't want that building for this because it's a huge, as we've written about, we've done shows on Behind the Headlines about. I think we've talked about it on Sidebar. It's a huge building. It's an old building. It needs a ton of work. It is not right for every wonderful idea.
That is
right,
completely correct.
But the city owns it, and I think they're gone through a number of processes to kind of assess the various things that are out there. So again, people, back to you, Marina, for people who know somebody who went to MCA, or maybe they went to MCA, or they've heard, or they read about this, what should they do?
They can email me at mca2025@brooksmuseum.org. And we will send them the link to the questionnaire to fill out. Or if it's somebody with an artwork in their home, ask for a JPEG and take a look at it and add it to the list of possible things for consideration for inclusion in the exhibition.
Right. And you're pretty open to, I mean, even if somebody knows somebody and they just want to you really do want to spread this big net as big as you can.
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you do, I was thinking about just as we're sitting here talking, and I don't mean to make more work for you, but this is an exhibit, and there'll be the catalog. Will there be kind of a oral history at all, or like interviews with any of the artists, or is that just not in your purview?
That's not in my purview. But Joanne Self-Selvage did that really nice documentary about the college, and there are a lot of interviews in that. In fact, I have been watching that and getting some great stories out of that. She did a really nice job with that.
That's a great reminder. Yes. Where can people get that if they haven't seen it and they're listening to this?
I don't know. I got it from Susan Miller.
Okay.
Just got to know someone. No, I'm sure it's available
I know.
online.
I'm sure the library has it.
Yeah.
I'm sure the public library has it.
I will, in the article that goes with this, I'll try to put something in there. I'll do some research when we finish and put wherever we can link people to, send people to see that documentary. With just a couple minutes left, I know I asked you, although I don't remember your answer, but I will ask you because I ask everybody who comes on the show, what was your first concert? Did you ever attend it?
It may have been Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66.
Wow.
With my family. My parents got those tickets. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah. And so where was that? Where were you?
I grew up in Westchester, right outside of New York City.
Very cool.
And so
first show you went to that you bought your own tickets.
Oh my God. Jethro Tull.
Nice.
I know.
The Garden?
No,
or somewhere small?
In Italy.
Oh, in Italy. Nice. That's great.
It's crazy is what it is.
Playing the flute, the whole thing,
the
white bodysuit or whatever it was, or the warehouse overalls or something. Yeah, no, that's pretty good. And what was yours? Because we asked about this and I've forgotten.
I think the first concert I attended that I didn't pay for personally was, I think Green Day. In high school. That was, I think, my answer. And my best friend's dad took us down in his minivan and slept in the parking lot while we had a good time.
That's a first.
But it was a great show. I think Jimmy Eat World was the opener. Yeah. So it was
that's
good.
good.
Show.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not the first Green Day, but that's the first somebody sleeping in a minivan. So that we know of. Yes, it's been announced to us. That could have happened more. Again, people can be watching the Brooks site as this exhibit comes closer, and more about that. We'll be writing more about it as it's coming up. The email address is one more time.
MCA2025@brooksmuseum.org.
If you just have anything about MCA that would be helpful. Thank you both. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate you being here. That is all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the show, you can go to wyxr.org and listen to it, or you can go to the Daily Memphian site, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.